I don't know if anybody's noticed, but I love video game Easter eggs, and I love showcasing them. Over the last decade or two, third-person shooters, they've gotten really big thanks to the success of games like Gears of War, Uncharted, and Fortnite. And naturally, these games are chocked full of Easter eggs. They really are, and it's enough to make a video today because I'm going to be bringing you my 15 best Easter eggs that are specifically in third-person shooters. If you guys would take a second, drop a like, make sure you have those notifications turned on, and let me know what your favorite third-person shooter of all time is, and let's get into this. At number 15, I'm going to go with Mjolnir in Just Cause 3. The Just Cause games are known for their insane action, massive open worlds, and they have little details everywhere. This one was released in 2015, and it had some hiccups at launch, but it's okay. It's still a great game, and it's a solid entry in the series. One of the many Easter eggs in this game was a pretty awesome nod to the popularity of Marvel comics and movies at that time in the form of Mjolnir, Thor's iconic hammer. If you go to the coordinates north 40-48.565 and east 5-40.860, you will find a massive crater, and in the dead center will be Thor's mighty hammer, sitting there waiting for whoever is worthy enough to move it. Next up is Dark Sector in Warframe. Now, Dark Sector is a third-person shooter released back in the 360 and PS3 days, and it was really trying to compete with games like Gears of War and Uncharted, but it didn't catch on. However, the developers, Digital Extremes, would later on go to make Warframe, one of the most popular third-person shooters in the world right now, so it seems only natural that they would stick a few references to their previous work. Throughout Warframe, you can participate in missions called Dark Sectors, which revolve around fighting enemies created by something, technosites or something. Not only in the mission title is it blatantly a reference to the game Dark Sector, but that game also involved technosite-type enemies as well, so it all ties in together. At number 13, Club Raha in Uncharted 2. I think Uncharted 2 is one of the best third-person shooters of all time. It helped popularize the genre in the late 2000s, and during chapters 5 and 6 of this story, you can get a look at a building in the background called Club Raha. And you probably looked right past this and wrote it off as part of the scenery, but it's actually deeper than that. Do you guys remember the name of one of the main villains in the first Uncharted game? Eddie Raha. Well, Club Raha doesn't have a whole lot of significance in the Uncharted game, so it's a little unclear if this appearance is Uncharted 2 is supposed to be a story element or a fun little nod to the first game. But regardless, it's always cool to see callbacks to old characters and sequels. At number 12, Cluck and Bell in Max Payne 3. Max Payne 3 is one of the best third-person shooters of its time, and it kind of sucks that it got largely forgotten in Rockstar's lineup of games. Just like other Rockstar games, Max has quite a few hidden references to other Rockstar titles, namely Grand Theft Auto. In Chapter 13 of the story, you can find a computer desk with some bobbleheads on it, but if you look really closely, one of those bobbleheads actually has a Cluck and Bell logo on its shirt, and you may ask, what is Cluck and Bell? Well, it's a fast food chain from the Grand Theft Auto series. At number 11, Nicole is dead in Dead Space. Now, Dead Space was a game changer in the world of action horror. You played as a mechanic on the space station after it gets attacked by a horrific alien race that takes over the bodies of its victims. Throughout the game, you're also on the lookout for your missing girlfriend, but the big twist of this story is that she was dead all along and you were hallucinating her. But the developers threw in a little hint at this in the form of the chapter names. By taking the first letter of all 12 chapters from the campaign, they spell out Nicole is dead, foreshadowing the truth about your mission and serving as a pretty great... it was pretty great. At number 10, Jill Sandwich in Resident Evil 2 Revelations 2. Now, Jill Sandwich is one of the most iconic moments from the Resident Evil history, if you ask me. It's one of the cheesiest lines from the original game and has since been cemented in gaming culture. Capcom has always wanted to call back this terrible line in the later Resident Evil games, and in Revelations 2, there is one sequence where the player character Claire is almost crushed by a giant machine, but escapes it, at which point she will say, "I was almost a Claire sandwich," which is an obvious callback to the Jill sandwich from RE1. At number 9, Far Cry Blood Dragon in The Division 2. Now, Ubisoft loves packing their games with references to their other games, and in huge open world games like Division 2, it makes sense for them to fill that space with self-advertising. Throughout the city in The Division 2, you'll find arcade machines with fictional titles, but every once in a while you'll come across one that says Far Cry Blood Dragon, which is an obvious reference to the 2013 game of the same name, which itself was a parody of action movies and arcade games of the 1980s. At number 8, Dead Rising and Resident Evil 5. Now, to me, RE5 was a polarizing game. On one hand, people hated it for being such a step away from the franchise's roots, but on the other hand, a lot of people loved it for being a solid co-op shooter. But regardless, there is a pretty fun nod to Dead Rising in this game, which is another Capcom zombie franchise, somewhat early in RE5 in the campaign. You can come across a list of deceased people, which most people barely even looked at. But if you do take a look, you'll see the names Frank and Isabella right next to each other, which is actually a reference to Frank West and Isabella Keyes from Dead Rising. So was this Capcom making a reference to their other zombie game, or are the two franchises actually in the same universe and RE5 just takes place after Frank dies? I guess we'll never know. At number 7, Lost in Ghost Recon: The Future Soldier. Am I the only one who misses the old Ghost Recon games? The series has been converted into another Ubisoft sandbox, but the older, smaller scale games were pretty cool. Ghost Recon Future Soldier launched in 2012. It flew way under the radar, although it had some redeeming qualities. On the multiplayer map Pipeline, there was actually a clever reference to the TV show Lost, which had finished during the game's development. By heading to the northmost section of the map and then rotating around the wall in a clockwise direction, you'll find the numbers 4, 18, 15, 16, 23, and 42 all in a row. If you've never watched Lost, you probably won't get it, but if you have, well, this is going to ring some bells. At number 6, the Konami code in Anthem. Yes, Anthem sucked, but that doesn't mean it didn't have a good Easter egg or two. At the main menu of Anthem, you're treated to a cool shot of the mech suits and their pilots along with the game's orchestral score. However, if you don't push start and instead enter up, up, down, down, left, right, circle, cross, AB if you're on Xbox, the music will change to a fun 8-bit remix instead. With how overly fancy video games are now, it's nice to give a little nod to where the industry actually came from, even though this game completely flopped. Now we're at number 5. The creepy loading screen in Spec Ops: The Line. I've played this game. Spec Ops is a borderline horror game that really digs into the horrors of war. There's a ton of really shocking moments throughout the campaign, but one of the creepiest ones is that not everybody is actually going to see it. During the chapter of the campaign, Penultimate, there is a part where you go up against a heavy turret. Now, most people won't actually have an issue with this enemy, but if you die to him and go back to the last checkpoint, you'll get this creepy loading screen. This is the only point in the campaign where this loading screen will play. It's creepy. At number 4, Hamilton in Gears 5. Hamilton took the world by storm by being a topical and extremely unique musical that first hit Broadway back in 2015. Well, someone over at Microsoft was clearly a fan of the show because there is a chapter in the Gears of 5 game campaign with multiple references to it. During this mission, you have to fight your way through an abandoned theater and you'll see multiple posters for a show called Embry. And the design is blatantly a nod to the iconic poster for Hamilton. Let's stick with Hamilton in Watch Dogs 2. One more. Now this one's much harder to find than the one in Gears 5, but it's still cool. Because Watch Dogs 2 is an open world game with a whole bunch of NPCs roaming around, it's actually pretty hard to get this one to trigger. But if you're running around the map and you bump into one of the female NPCs, there's a chance she will recite a line from Hamilton back at you. Like I said, this one's tough to do because it's random and there's an open world and there's so many NPC dialogue lines going on, but if you do it enough, you'll hear it. At number 2, Sackboy in the Order 1886. This was an incredibly underwhelming third-person shooter for the PS4. It looked amazing, but it was super short and very shallow, which led to people calling it one of the most disappointing PS4 exclusives of all time, and I agree with that. But being a Sony game, it had some fun Easter eggs. During Chapter 3, you make your way through a couple buildings, and there's one point where you can look around the rooms, and on one of the desks, you'll find a little Sackboy, which is a nice little nod to Little Big Planet, one of Sony's more underappreciated exclusives from the PS3 era. And at number 1 today, Mad World and Gears of War 3 multiplayer. The song Mad World is heavily associated with the Gears of War franchise because of its use in the original game's reveal trailer as well as its use during Dom's death in the Gears 3 campaign. Spoiler, sorry. But did you know there's actually a way to get the song to play during a multiplayer match in Gears 3? In the Gears 3 version of Gridlock, there are corpses made of ash spread around the map that you either have to leave or destroy by shooting them or walking through them. But if you manage to play an entire round of multiplayer without anybody disturbing any of the corpses, the next round will commence with the Mad World playing in the background of the fight, which really adds to the atmosphere of the game. It is a super cool Easter egg that you didn't see very often, but when you did, it was kind of special. And there you have it, my friends. Those are some really, really good third-person shooter Easter eggs. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, and I'll see you soon.